Hello and welcome. It is time to grab some tea and talk about PoE. Lore. Hopefully that's not too cringy. So I was thinking that it might be fun to try a new series called Tales in Wraeclast, where I give you kind of like a campfire story of what happened in one instance in Wraeclast. And the first one I've chosen is really good because it's kind of the exposition into Path of Exile 2's Breach lore. Everything we saw in Keepers of the Flame in PoE 1 that is going to make its way into PoE 2, and it might give us an ending to the story. Now, I'm going to try and make this a podcast that you can just listen if you want to, because it's meant to be just like a storytelling format, but I'm going to try and include some visual aids alongside what I'm saying here just to keep it interesting to look at if that's the format you choose. And everything I have written here, because I do like creative writing, so this is like creative writing stuff, but it is as close to the lore as I could get it, basically. So this should be like basically canon. Let's get into it. I have my book here and a story to be read. I have glasses. These are my glasses. I don't wear them because the prescription is very, very light on them, so I don't need them, but I thought that it would make me look smarter, and PoE makes me feel dumb, so I'll take anything I can get. Back in Oriath, the ranger was called a thief, a poacher, an animal. Thrown onto a ship just to be thrown off again, she found herself, like many others, on the shores of Wraeclast. All criminals eventually made their way onto this wretched continent. Seething with monstrosity, she made quick work of the so-called enemies. The rotting ships and drowned men were simply a warm-up for the forests she would have to wade through. Something within Wraeclast makes every grain of sand and mossy rock alive. Perhaps it's magic or hatred that fuels these aggressive entities. It seemed to follow the exile wherever she traveled. It's no matter, it's what the ranger was made for, to carry out the will of those without the means, and of course, one of those would be Ailith. Normally you can tell a cult member from their clothes. They all wear the same color and have the same half-dead look in their eyes. Ailith wasn't like that. Her decorative garb almost looked Marraketh. Her eyes were shadowy, but hey, the ranger had seen enough empty eye sockets that it wasn't something she thought about too hard. Creatures from another world are invading Wraeclast, Ailith said, as if this was new or interesting. This continent is a patchwork quilt of invasions. Ailith pleaded with the ranger. We'll all be swarmed soon enough, unless we do something. For the ranger, this was no conundrum. From where she stood, the only way to continue her journey was to go towards this so-called invasion. Ailith reached out her arm while holding another arm. She asked the ranger to take this decaying body part, claiming it would meld somehow with her body. Would it be stupid or reckless for the ranger to take this? After all the virtue gems she had seen stuffed into human organs and limbs she'd taken off of rotting monsters, this arm seemed almost benign. The ranger picked it up emotionlessly. Endless killing desensitizes a person that way. Oh good, you survived the melding, Ailith says. You survived? This was a detail so conveniently left out when she handed this unmoving limb to the ranger. The arm crawled its way onto the ranger's shoulder blade and settled there. As it did, a bright wall blocking her way seemed to melt before her. A familiar wooden arch revealed itself, and she took a final glance at this armored woman before continuing onward. The ranger was already familiar with this roa-ridden coast. The monsters would charge at her again and again, throwing her to the ground unless she shot first. Of course, there was something Ailith didn't warn her about. The beast hellscape was made into a twisted monster's fortress. Enormous walls scaled several stories high. Covered in a violet growth and engraved in complex shapes, they seemed to be protecting something in the center. The Roas were merely an audience to this foreign structure. The ranger shot several arrows at once, aiming for a pack of Roas in the distance, but one hit the brilliant fuchsia walls. The wall disintegrated. It melted, as if the mere force of the arrow made it invisible. Where was this Ailith person? The ranger shot an endless barrage of arrows into these walls, but still some magic kept a purple underworld visible beneath the sands of Wraeclast. She pushed forward through layers of this defense, and finally reached the epicenter. A glowing orb hovered above several large stone hands. It was so hot it refused the indigo tones of its surroundings, glowing instead a bright, violent pink, as if warning anything living not to touch it. As the ranger stepped closer for another look, Ailith screamed behind her. The ranger jumped. That didn't happen often these days. Fear had worn thin in Wraeclast, but there was something about that high, human sound, raw and sharp, that made her skin feel as if it were trying to leap from her bones. The woman started pouring energy into the orb. She wasn't kidding. This is a war. Then the enemy started to crawl in. Large insectoid monstrosities spilled forward on 4 legs. They did not rush the ranger. They went for Ailith. The ranger emptied her quiver numerous times, shooting 2 or 3 arrows at once. She shielded Ailith and watched the swarms surge forward and recoil in waves, each push carrying them closer than the last. On the 4th wave, the ranger found her new arm pulsing with energy. There was power in this place, or perhaps power in the meld itself. Either way, she found she could conjure the magic here. With a thought, she raised a wall of purple flame, and the swarms hurled themselves into it and melted. The defense was a welcome one. The ranger had been steadily losing ground, but this new ability changed things. She found a way to send meteors crashing towards the ground to bombard the onslaught of creatures. Finally, after an eternity passed, Ailith shrieked out in pain. "For the dreamer!" she cried, pleading with something the ranger could neither see nor understand, as her body disappeared in the cloud of purple flame, the same strange fire that burned within the glowing orb. Then she was simply gone. What? A whole life thrown away for a stretch of shoreline better claimed by roas and gulls? The ranger stood in stunned disbelief. Yet as she watched, the violet corruption began to draw inward, sucked away just as Ailith had been. It seems even if her death didn't seem worth it, it wasn't in vain. She successfully destroyed this hive. The ranger waited for sounds of life to return. They did not. The shore had gone still, but not peaceful. The insects were dead. The hive was gone. The stretching purple hue had folded in on itself and vanished, leaving only endless remains, steaming sand, and the smell of burning bodies. Ailith had done what she came to do. That was the part that bothered the ranger most. What did her death accomplish? Surely there would be more of these purple spawners. Maybe cults just do that to you, make you willing to die for so little return. Wraeclast was full of wasted deaths. A butchered caravan, a drowned exile, a man killed for a loaf of bread, then raised again by some fool with a gem and a grudge. But this was different. Ailith had prepared and enlisted help. She gave the ranger an additional limb. But after all that, any mark of her existence was gone. The hive was gone. The wound had closed. And then, where the violet corruption had disappeared, a new wound opened. A portal. The air folded in a clean circle, pale at the edges, its center filled with a place that was not the shore. Stone floors, hanging banners, a quiet courtyard washed in soft purple light. Somewhere beyond it, bells chimed. They were not an alarm, but an invitation. The ranger had followed plenty of things in Wraeclast that she should have left alone. Blood trails, ghost lights, voices in ruins, the footprints of beasts too heavy for the mud that held them. This would surely be another ancient being that would create havoc for the continent. The ranger knew she had stopped and started many, so what was another? She stepped through. The monastery did not look like a fortress. It was a church. Another church waging war in Wraeclast shouldn't be surprising at this point. Still though, how did Alith prepare for such a violent encounter at a serene place like this? The place was almost beautiful. It was, if nothing else, a bit empty. The stone was cold, and there was nothing here to juxtapose that chill other than the countless purple torches. The ranger thought that as a cult follower, Ailith didn't seem to wear nearly enough of that color. Before the ranger spotted the tree, she saw its roots. They threaded through the floors as if the building had not been built around the tree, but had been slowly swallowed by it. The air smelled of incense, wet bark, and the blood of monsters the ranger had just slain. Before the ranger could even look up at the tree, she staggered backwards as her eyes met yet another figure. Ailith was there, alive, standing beneath the archway as if she had not just screamed herself into ash on a ruined shore. Ailith smiled. Not warmly or falsely, just tired. It was as if this meeting had happened before and would happen again. She welcomed the rangers to the monastery and spoke of its purpose. A haven where the keepers trained to defend Wraeclast and where they protected their greatest weapon, the Genesis tree. Alith spoke. The tree provides everything we need to sustain ourselves and protect this world from the hiveborn. The ranger thought for a moment. This cult was centered around a tree? Who could lead such an effort to create a grand monastery simply because of a twisted crop? It grew at the heart of the monastery. Tree was the wrong word. Trees belong to soil, had seasons. Trees take sun and house birds that nest where branches split. This thing did none of that. Its trunk rose pale and veined from a bed of dark earth, its surface slick in places like living flesh. Its branches curled upward through the open air, heavy with strange growths that pulsed like organs under bark. Some fruits hung soft and wet, others twitched. The ranger had seen nature do terrible things. She had seen wasps lay eggs in living meat, vines choke trees to death, fungi wear corpses like masks. But nature had a rhythm. This tree had intention. The ranger thought of the hive. She wondered why the keeper's greatest weapon looked so much like the enemy's work. Ailith explained it simply enough. The tree could take pieces of the enemy, cultivate them, grow new strength from their blood. The fruits of war would become weapons. Perhaps the ranger could create her own weapons from this tree. There were more hives after that. The ranger's memory from then on was simple. Her actions blurred together as if routine. It was arrows, blood, flames. Ailith's voice through smoke, an outstretched hand in a broken field, a hive protecting unrelated groves of forest, a fortress of chitin and purple light, wave after wave of hiveborn crawling out of walls that breathed. The ranger killed until her fingers split. She burned graft blood into the earth. She learned to use the flame not like a spell, but like a wound she could open in herself and turn outward. Ailith appeared again and again, always at the heart of the worst fighting, always certain and always ready to spend herself. Like all things, the ranger found herself numb to the task eventually. What was another 100 monsters after the first 70,000? As long as she could take from these monsters to fuel her power, she didn't care if Ailith needed to leave and return constantly. Remains of the old breach lords had been fed to the Genesis tree, Esh and Tool. Power from the other side, pulped and grafted into the monastery's living weapon. Ailith believed something had changed among the hiveborn. The creatures once known as breach lords were now subordinate to Zesht, a collective being, and their sudden surge on Wraeclast was frantic, hungry, and mad. The door opened after the limbs. That was how the ranger remembered it. The only signal for the door opening was a soft grinding of shifting stone somewhere previously completely silent. "It's been stuck, closed for as long as I can remember," Ailith has said. Now that it was open, they entered together. The hidden room smelled like wet bark and old meat. This wasn't shocking. The whole monastery smelled like a literal bloody tree. And in the room were dozens of dark shapes. They descended from the ceiling and walls, thick and pale, each one feeding into shapes suspended in the dim violet light. At first, the ranger thought they were bodies. Then she saw the faces. Ailith. Another Ailith. Another. Dozens of them. Some incomplete, some only a shape beneath translucent flesh. They all were in deep slumber. The ranger did not speak. Ailith did. Only a few words. It was enough to break the inescapable tension. They were all her. The room answered every question the ranger had been carrying. Why Ailith returned and yet still went into death-defying hordes of enemies. Why Ailith seemed to disappear and reappear, and yet the monastery held no other followers. Why the dreamer's gifts felt so much like the enemy's hives. The Genesis tree had not only been making weapons, it had been making Ailith, again and again and again. Finally, the dreamer spoke, not from a throat or from the walls, but from everywhere the purple light touched. His voice was calm and comforting, perfect for someone leading an army from such a peaceful place. "Ailith, this was never meant for your eyes," he said, another truth hidden away, although this was one of the more shocking secrets the ranger could remember. Even if the ranger were to raise her bow, there would be nowhere to aim. Ailith's horror had caught up with her. "I'm nothing but a hive-born abomination, a mindless pawn, like them!" she yelled, facing the ultimate betrayal. And the cruelest part? The dreamer corrected her. He said, "You are not mindless. You died long ago. I preserved your essence." The ranger finally understood that Ailith wasn't a person anymore at all. She was a projection of the past used for fights of the present. Ailith said he had no right. Her anger overflowed the walls of this small hidden room. The dreamer continued by saying she belonged to him. What a pitiful and detached sight it was to look at Ailith in this moment. All of the strange interactions finally made sense. Rightfully so, Ailith pushed back against the dreamer. She rejected the existence he had forced upon her. As Ailith defied him, the dreamer revoked his gift. The ranger watched as for the 100th, maybe 1,000th time, Ailith disappeared in purple flame. This time, the ranger did not mistake it for sacrifice. This was disposal. Ailith burned where she stood, body breaking into violet ash as the dreamer had simply withdrawn permission for her to continue. The copies remained all around her. The tree pulsed softly. The ranger did not move. She had seen death before, too much of it. But death usually ended something. This did not. This was like pruning a branch so the tree could grow another. Somewhere behind her, the monastery bells sounded again, soft and patient, as if nothing had happened. Once the ranger left this forbidden room, another Ailith had taken her usual spot near the tree. She did not remember the hidden room. She did not remember the dreamer's confession. She did not remember burning. The ranger couldn't help but try to create memory where none could be forged. She started speaking of the room, the endless Ailiths, and the dreamer. The air changed before the words finished leaving her mouth. Ailith burned again into that now familiar violet flame. Another Ailith stood in her place, fresh, confused, polite. Ailith asked whether the ranger had said something. The ranger stood there for a long time. She had once thought the breach was the horror, large hands reaching into the air, the hive-born crawling through torn light, the alien world trying to root itself in Wraeclast. But the monastery taught her something worse. The breach did not only grow monsters. For some, it grew endless suffering. Ailith was not alive, not dead, not resurrected in any honest sense. She was preserved, yet somehow rewritten. Ailith was a woman turned into a weapon that forgot each time it understood the hand that held it. And that, the ranger realized, was the true horror of the dreamer. Not that he lied. Wraeclast was full of liars. Not that he used Ailith. Wraeclast was full of users. The horror was that he wielded humanity as a weapon. The hive still needed burning. Zesht still reached for the world. The hive-born still crawled through the wounds. And somewhere beneath the bells, roots, and violet flame of this monastery, another Ailith was already opening her eyes, ready to fight, die, and forget. The breach was not the most dangerous when it opened. Just like the beast, breaches were most dangerous when they needed an equally powerful weapon to destroy them. Maybe in Path of Exile 2, we can create a different weapon than a tragic character. The end. I hope you enjoyed. And if you would like more, I think it could be very useful coming into all of the new quest lines we have for the Path of Exile 2 endgame, and I thought this would be a great story to tell in the meantime while we're waiting for the new league. I'm so excited to play. So, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great morning, day, evening, whatever it is. I hope it's awesome. Bye.